Hot cold. Hello.
Okay, so we've got another forecast. This is the summer forecast with ZamboniFunk. And we're so excited to talk about what we've got going on, the space weather for the summer of 2025. We've got Jupiter in Cancer. We've got uh, Uranus in Gemini. We've got a wonderful Mars and Saturn opposition going on. Lots of other fun stuff. But how are you doing, Zamboni? How has your spring been?
Oh, you know what you're saying here, living a dream, one day at a time, as always. This has been a very eventful spring for me. It is. I haven't. It doesn't look that way if you were to look at my like public profile or whatever. But there is. You mentioned Jupiter in Cancer, and I am building up to some major stuff that I'm trying to release under Jupiter in Cancer. I've got some like big elections that I'm looking toward, especially in Q4. So not this quarter that we're going to talk about today, but the next one, I think is when we start to get some really nice Jupiter elections. And so in the meantime, I've been sort of head down and just trying to learn the things that I need to learn and do the things that I need to do in order to be ready for that launch. So, but it's been good. It's been a very creative season for me. And, personally, in I'm feeling fairly productive these days, which, the progress feels good to me. How about y'all? What's been going on with y'all this summer?
We got married
Yeah.
officially.
Hi,
Yes.
love to see it.
Yeah, it was super fun. And Isaac actually created an Astro Garden.
I created my Zodiac Garden, which I've been planning for years, but finally manifested. It's
Yeah,
kind of big too. It's not too big, but it's a nice size. So it's got it's a big square. So use like a medieval square chart,
Mhm.
which is the same as a North Indian chart mainly. Um, and I planted in each of the 12 beds. I planted like chives and um, cayenne
pepper.
pepper in Aries. And so
Mhm. Mhm.
so I'm very excited about that. It's a lovely place, and it's like a nice formal garden.
Yeah.
Because we have a
Mhm.
lot of more
Mhm.
wild gardens and stuff, but it's nice to have like a little formal focal point garden. That when you're in the center of it, then you're also in the center of the universe.
Right, right. Well, for me, someone like me, I'm always at the center, but we'll let you be at the center sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Very cute. Yeah. So it's been a nice spring overall.
Overall, cold and
Yeah.
rainy though. One of the coldest, rainiest springs that I've ever experienced.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it got to 85 once. And then I think the average has been like 60,
Yeah.
maybe 60, 65. But, you know, cloudy,
Yeah, I wonder if we're
rainy.
gonna melt in the late summer.
Yeah.
When it gets to August and September, I wonder if we're just gonna like, you know, die about it. Because we had a pretty cool summer here as well. We've gotten to the point where it's hot now, but there was so much rain,
Yeah.
and all the farmers were like, please stop. This is too
Yeah,
much.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like the hay is growing really well, but there's no time to cut it because
Yeah.
you can't cut
Uh-huh.
it during the rain and then it'll get all moldy. But no, you know, we'll see how it goes. You gotta, these days everything's in flux.
Sure.
Water is
Although, maybe this is going to be an excellent growing season. One would expect such from Jupiter and Cancer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also maybe a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. If Jupiter makes things bigger and expands things, and we put Jupiter into a water sign, then big water makes
Yeah.
perfect
Big
sense here,
water.
right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So should we just get right into it with Jupiter?
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about Jupiter and Cancer.
Okay, let's do
Okay.
it.
This is definitely like what we've been waiting for 12 years.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah. I don't think that I was studying astrology the last time that Jupiter is in Cancer. I'm about 9 years deep or something like that. So I haven't been waiting for 12 years. But it is delightful to see Jupiter in this condition. This is my natal rising sign. So I look forward to the growth that is possible here for not just me, though, because Jupiter in Cancer is going to be good for everybody. This is for the last few years, we've had, last year we had Jupiter in Gemini, which was Jupiter in detriment or exile, which is to say that Jupiter has been as far away from home as possible. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is opposite to Gemini. And so Jupiter is in this opposite position where Jupiter typically likes to expand things, look at the big picture, look at wisdom and see the whole forest. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is much more focused on the details of things, the small bits of things. Mercury in Gemini wants to look at the tree, or even more specifically, wants to look at branches and how different branches interact with each other and this kind of thing, rather than Jupiter, who wants to see the big picture, right? So Jupiter in Gemini has been sort of bogged down with details and too much information and all of this sort of stuff. Where that has been going on for a year. And then even before that, we had Jupiter, associated with the nodes. And it was just it's been uncomfortable for a little while now. And then to see Jupiter moving into Cancer, which is Jupiter's sign of exaltation. So whenever we think about exaltation, then we can think about something being literally exalted or lifted up in some kind of way. It's like when Jupiter wants to do whatever Jupiter thinks he wants to do, then there's a platform at which to do it. And so Jupiter is very good at doing the sort of expansion, making things bigger, not just bigger, though, also making them better. There's a strong improvement kind of quality to the way that Jupiter likes to work. And in Cancer, Cancer is the sign that is ruled by the moon. And so this is very good for nourishment and for the cultivation of big truths and wisdom and clarity and stuff like that. This is a really good time for Jupiter. And we get Jupiter, Jupiter spends a year in a sign. And so this is a long period of time where we've got some really nice Jupiter that we can work with here. So I'm really excited to see it happening, finally.
Yeah.
And we've had, for a long time, we've had both benefics in rough shape. We had, even while during this past Jupiter in Gemini, we also had Venus in Aries for a really long time because there was a retrograde in Aries, and that's another detriment or exile position, and also retrograde. So it's been uncomfortable benefics for a while. Benefics are the ones that typically bring you things that you like, that feel comfortable, that feel beneficial in some kind of way. And so to see that we've got, and even today, we've got Jupiter in Cancer, and we've also got Venus in Taurus in a home position as well. So both benefics are in great shape right now, and it's lovely to see, honestly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Here for it.
For sure. Yeah, I guess I wasn't studying astrology 12 years ago either. But this is the best place for the best planet. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter's the greatest benefic, and when he's exalted in Cancer, that he's able to give the most blessings. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really a beautiful time, and a time also to take advantage of, and to receive all those gifts. So I am excited that we each picked an election too to share with
Mm-hmm.
the audience. Um, Maybe we'll do that in a little bit, but there are some wonderful times this summer and fall, and also I think that the Q4 time period, there's some even more top tier Jupiter
Mm-hmm.
stuff going on. But there's some good times this summer to like to to store some of that Jupiter energy, Jupiter and Cancer energy. So I'm excited for that. This is also a
Yeah.
great time to get started in alchemy too. If you're doing spagyrics, uh, a lot of people, the you know traditional teachers will suggest that you should start with Jupiter.
Mm.
Start with
Mm.
Jupiter in terms of uh, what is it called again? Melissa.
A lemon balm.
Lemon balm. Lemon balm is the first spagyric to make, and some classic authors will put lemon balm as Jupiter in Cancer, and so it's a really good
Hmm.
time to start working with spagyrics, and do and whatever kind of elections you're doing, whether it's talismans, whether it's spagyrics, whether it's something else, like this,
Starting a business.
starting a business, whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
This is a great time to take advantage of that Jupiter in Cancer. So anyway,
Yeah, and one of the nice things about Jupiter in Cancer is that you might not even have to do electional astrology in order, like, we're just kind of awash in lovely Jupiter for a little while. So all you got to do is ride the wave. All you got to, Jupiter's job is to say yes to things a lot of times, to give you the thumbs up in some kind of way. So during Jupiter in Cancer, then for this whole year from June 25 to June 2026, there like it's a good time to say yes to things that feel good.
Okay.
So I really like that. And then the other thing that I think about here with this Jupiter, because I really do think that it's later in the transit that Jupiter in Cancer starts to look really good, because there's some stuff that Jupiter's got to get through first. We've got Saturn in Aries right now, right? And Saturn in Aries is in the overcoming position. That is to say that Aries rises earlier than Cancer does. And so if we put Jupiter in Cancer on the eastern horizon, on the rising, then that means that Saturn is culminating at the midheaven. And so that means that Saturn has the high ground, right?
Yeah.
So whenever you're trying to do your Jupiter stuff, then there's going to be this Saturn weight that's on top of you that you got to deal with, right? And so one of the ways that I have been thinking about this is that Jupiter really likes to help. Jupiter wants to make things better. And so as much as I want Jupiter in Cancer to just be this unadulterated good, just like all good all the time, that's not actually what we get for the first bit of this. We've got Jupiter square to Saturn, and then a little bit later, then Mars is going to move into Libra, and so that's going to be Jupiter square to Mars as well. And so and those are our malefics. So those are opposite to the benefics. Benefics are the ones that typically bring us nice things. Malefics are the ones that typically bring us discomfort. Now, that's not to say that one is good or evil, but rather comfort versus discomfort. But if what you want is a whole bunch of Jupiter comfort, and then there's a thorn in your side, then it's less comfortable than you want it to be, right? But what I feel like we're seeing here is that there is a thorn, and Jupiter is in good position to help with that.
Okay.
So where there's trouble around malefics, Saturn in Aries is a great example. So where Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, like lifted up, very good at doing the Jupiter things without even too much responsibility, just like go straight to the good stuff. Saturn in Aries is fallen. So that is to say that Saturn is like kind of down in a ditch and has trouble doing the Saturn things well from this position, right? So Saturn causes trouble and drama in the first place, right? And then Saturn is extra grumpy in Aries. And not only Saturn in Aries, but also Saturn in Aries with Neptune. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's not good for the Saturn stuff, right? And so there's trouble to be had there. But Jupiter in Cancer is like, well, hey, hold on a minute. Let's look at the big picture. Maybe there's something here worthwhile. Maybe there's something here worth cultivating. And so even though Jupiter isn't in position to just do marvelous Jupiter things so gloriously for this quarter, Jupiter is in position to help out with whatever trouble Saturn runs into, or later Mars in Libra. The same sort of situation. Mars is uncomfortable in Libra and going to be super grumpy in that position. But Jupiter in Cancer is actually going to be in the overcoming position to that Mars in Libra and is going to be able to be like, all right, hold on, Doug. It's going to be okay. Where there's something worthwhile here. Let's zoom out. Let's look at the big picture. Let's see what kind of lessons we can learn, what kind of wisdom there is to be had here. And Jupiter can bring some joy and prosperity even out of the difficulty, trouble, challenge, drama that is associated with the malefics.
Mm.
Yeah.
So when does this Saturn in Aries square occur?
That's like next week or something like that.
Okay.
So it's pretty
Okay.
early because Saturn is at 1 degree of Aries. And
Mhm.
so Jupiter, as soon as Jupiter moved into Cancer, then it was immediately in that square. And we'll clear it next week. And we'll be in orb for, a little while there. But it's pretty quick after that Saturn or that Jupiter gets past Saturn, as long as you're concerned about 3 or 5 degree orb or something like that, then it's pretty quick out of that. Now, some people will use whole sign aspects, and so as long as Saturn is in Aries, then Jupiter at least has to think about that and deal with that in some kind of way.
Mhm.
But that one happens pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Cool.
The other thing to mention is that Jupiter is combust currently.
Oh yeah, you're right about that.
So he's, the sun is too close to Jupiter, and the sun is gaining every day on Jupiter. Um, so like this first like June through until the middle of July basically is not the best time to work with Jupiter for sure. Because
Right.
because you have the square with the Saturn and then also the combustion. But
Mhm.
the one thing too with whole sign house aspects from the Vedic tradition that I practice, um, the whole sign house aspects are for each planet has its own aspect, and Saturn has a 10th house aspect, a third house aspect, and a seventh house aspect. So from that perspective, uh, Saturn is not aspecting Jupiter by whole sign house. It doesn't give the square. So, but that's from this tradition, and I kind of like look at each tradition within that tradition. But from a Hellenistic perspective, perhaps there is that aspect happening. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to mention the sun combusting Jupiter right now too. So it's better to wait
Mhm.
until like middle of July to if you're gonna to do stuff with Jupiter.
Right. And so the whole thing there with the combustion is that the sun is very bright, right? And so one of the reasons why we like the Benefics so much, Jupiter and Venus, is because they are extremely bright stars. They are the brightest stars in the sky. They are the brightest objects in the sky that are not the sun and the moon. So they shine this bright yellow or white light that it just looks gorgeous in the sky, right? This is as opposed to Mars, who shines red, or Saturn, who shines kind of brown or tan. And so there's a darker quality to those versus the bright quality of Jupiter and Venus. And so we really like those, especially being diurnal creatures, we really like the brightness and the light of things, right? And so then when one of those planets gets too close to the sun, then the sun outshines that planet. And so you can't see how delightfully bright that planet is anymore. And because of that, the way that I like to think about that combustion is the sun sort of sucks up the power of whatever planet is combust. And so that planet can't just do its thing the way that it wants to because the sun is there right close by it. And so one thing for you to do at home is just, like once we get to the middle of July or something like that, then look up in the sky and see if you can see Jupiter. If you can see Jupiter, then you're in pretty good shape as far as doing the Jupiter stuff. And also it's just fun to do. Like look at the sky. It's real cool.
Yeah, if you don't have clouds every night.
Yeah, sure, sure. Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean that's the thing about combustion. It's like literally something you can see or not see, as it
Mm-hmm.
were. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
literally whenever Jupiter is behind the beams of the sun, you can't see Jupiter, and so Jupiter can't give the blessings in the same way. So it's like
Right.
one of those like it's an astronomical phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas sometimes the aspects aren't as you can't necessarily see them as clearly. I mean, you can. They create geometrical shapes, but um, yeah, it's like that. The combustion is very very important.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so do you want to perhaps look at a couple elections now, or we
Sure.
could talk about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna
okay,
do Jupiter and Cancer elections, right? So let's
yeah, let's do it. Okay, so I'll share mine first. Mine is earlier. So it's funny that when we met this morning, we were like we picked the same election. So
work.
so
Yeah,
so
yeah.
but so I had a second one on deck. Oh, this here. Okay, can you see it?
Uh-huh.
So this is my, and I'll be honest. I saved some of my best elections for myself, but this is a pretty good one. It's workable if you're going to be doing something. It is at 4 in the morning. Um,
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by doing something?
so if you're going to make a talisman,
Mhm.
an easy talisman to do would be get some quartz. Get some quartz. Quartz is associated with Jupiter in traditional Western astrology and Arabic astrology, and Jupiter quartz is also especially good, I think, for Jupiter in Cancer because quartz also works for the moon,
Mhm.
and the moon rules Cancer,
Mm.
so it's that white stone, clear, and clear. You want a clear white quartz, and you can engrave. You can just engrave the sigil of Jupiter, and perhaps you could engrave a king. There are a couple of other wonderful images you can look up online, um, but the Jupiter symbol works as well, um, and you would do it at this specific time at like 4:07 a.m. And you'd really want to look to make sure that in your time zone, this is working because this is what's working in my time zone,
Mhm.
and this is during the hour of Jupiter, and I think it only goes until this particular program doesn't show hours, um, but you'd have to look to make sure that it's in the hour of Jupiter as well. So that's one thing you could do to make a little talisman for yourself and see how that works if you want to get into astrological magic. And then you would also, while before you engrave, you would have a candle. You would burn some incense for Jupiter, some Jupiterian incense.
Frankincense?
You can always use frankincense for anybody, pretty much. Lignum aloes are good if you can get those. You can even use uh, Melissa, lemon balm,
Oh.
um, and then recite the Orphic hymn to Jupiter. That's an easy invocation. There are some other invocations as well, but that one works. That's one thing you could do. Or this is when you could make your spagyric or make a tincture of lemon balm, or of another Jupiterian plant. Um, yeah. So or you could just invoke Jupiter and sit with Jupiter. Just sit with Jupiter in this time period. Depends on your level and what
So
you want
this
to be
is
doing.
basically connecting with Jupiter and honoring Jupiter so that you can get the benefic aspects of the planet um, more so, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like this is a really nice time for Jupiter. And so you can save that. And one way of thinking about it is you can save that energy in a talisman.
Yeah.
You're also kind
Okay.
of invoking an angel, a celestial angel, into that talisman. But another way, if you're making a tincture, but spagyric tinctures also you can make during. It doesn't have to be this precise. Like this is a very precise moment.
Hmm.
So here we have Jupiter on the ascendant in Cancer, and there's no major. See, he's separating from a square with Saturn. He's separating from the square with Neptune, and then the Moon has just entered Taurus and he's applying to a sextile with the Moon. The Moon is applying to a sextile with him. So that's also really important for elections is to make sure that the Moon is good, and the Moon in Taurus is really good. She's exalted in Taurus, and it's nice to have an applying aspect from the Moon to 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 the planet, the significator. Yeah, and make sure there aren't any negative aspects to the Moon. So the Moon is separating from a square to the Sun. But this is a good. It has a lot of light, decent amount of light. The Moon has a decent amount of light, and is in Taurus and is starting to get towards a sextile to Jupiter. So this is a decent election, not the best of the best elections, but it's workable. And so we wanted to give the listeners like a free election to work with this energy if they want to.
So 4:07 a.m. Friday, July 18th, 2025 in the East Coast.
Yes, and you'll want to look on your time zone to make sure that you have Jupiter rising and you have a Jupiter hour. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's a cute one.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh well, yeah. So yeah, just the because there is that square to Saturn, but he's separating from it. So in the the tradition of Picatrix and Ficino and so on, the separating square is fine. So within that tradition. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a nice election. That's also the election under which the North Star Campout is going to start, which is a conference that I've been invited to. It's like outside of Portland, Oregon. And my friend Dira Osland, who is also a friend of you, as I understand,
really
Isaac,
Yeah.
dope ass astrologer who has been a good friend of mine for some years now, has invited me out to speak at this conference. It's an astro magic event, so you can go to northstarcampout.org, I think, and check that out. I'll be speaking there. I am not the most prominent speaker who's going to be there. Eric Perdue is going to be there. Dee Damashena, what's her name? Diana Rose Harper is going to be there. Honestly, it's going to be the Parade of Stars. It's going to be dope. You can check that out, but that it's going to start under that election, which is clearly, it's clearly elected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so nice choice there.
Thanks. So what do you got?
Yeah, so I am looking at. So this is the 10th of August, and at late night, so 11:46 p.m. in this location. We'll see. You'll want to take a look. You want about 12 degrees of Taurus rising. This is actually more of a Venus election than a Jupiter one, but Venus and Jupiter are conjunct in Cancer at 12 and 13 degrees of Cancer. The moon is at 12 degrees of Pisces, making a beautiful partile trine to these two. Well, it's not partiles, but it's very exact. And still applying to these two. And also, all of them are making sextiles to the ascendant degree at 12 degrees of Taurus. So this is a very sort of flowing and complementary sort of situation. This looks very good for, engaging beauty and harmony and doing beautiful things with your friends, starting, cultivating some kind of garden community is, like late at night is a weird time to plant a garden, you know what I mean? But if we're thinking about garden as like a space where you can hang out with your friends and grow something beautiful together, then this is a perfect time for that. Especially since we can see that the moon is in the 11th house there, having to do with the network and community and all that sort of stuff. I think the moon was in the 11th house in your election as well. And so these look very good for, being together with your homies.
Nice. Yeah. And you know what? Yeah, this is a nice election. I like that kind of. Usually I do elections with the planet on the ascendant or the MC, but it's fun to do something like this where like they're sextiling pretty directly the ascendant.
Yeah. So what I did here is I tried to find, like, I love to just make the focal planet, just put it on the ascendant. You know what I mean? That's not always possible if you want the moon to be in the aspect that you want, or sometimes your houses get weird. And so like you want to make sure that stuff is in a decent house. Also, I don't know that I would use this for magical purposes. Like I probably wouldn't carve a talisman in this because the ruler of the rising is in the 3rd house in a cadent position.
Yeah.
So that's not the kind of thing that is likely to be a super powerful stone that shapes the world around you. This is more of a moment to cultivate something beautiful together,
Yeah.
you know? And one of the ways that I often, and you can find, I do a bunch of elections on my Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/ZamboniFunk, then I give you a whole list of elections every day of the month I'll talk about.
I
But
run my life off of it. Yes.
say again?
I run my life off of it. So
Oh, you do. Dope, dope. That's so cool. But yeah, so what you'll notice if you get that is that I very much like to, especially in a non-magical election, one of the things I like to do is I like to make the AC degree, um, tr like making some kind of soft aspect to a focal planet or to the moon or to a benefic or something like that. So the ascendant being the sort of thing that is begun in that moment, and then making a soft aspect is going to be friendly or complementary in some kind of way to it. It just helps to like rope in whatever benefic you're looking at here. And here we've got both benefics and the moon in mutual reception, all making a soft aspect to the ascendant degree.
mm,
Nice.
yeah. So
So
this is a
that's
good
a
time to
technique
have
that I like a lot. Say again?
this is a good time to have like a potluck with your friend, like a sort of party or something, like getting together with friends, like going on the river and rafting or something. Like what would you do this day?
Well, going on the river and rafting at midnight is sort of weird. I'm not sure that I would do that,
Maybe
you
like
know.
maybe a sleepover, but like a campfire,
Yeah,
you raft during the day, and then you're there for the night.
yeah. I would, so in order to make an election like this work,
Mm-hmm.
then I would have some kind of ceremonial thing that happens in this moment. So if you've got your
Okay.
friends over, your friends probably aren't going to arrive at this moment,
Right.
right? Your friends are already over. And
Yeah.
then in this moment, you maybe say a little prayer, pop a bottle. You know what I
Nice.
mean?
Okay. Love it.
Cool.
Sounds good.
So this isn't exactly the same election that I had. I
Oh, okay.
I
So you
had it.
wanna
Well,
you wanna
yeah,
flex
yeah,
on them?
sure. It's just a little bit later,
Oh.
basically.
Sure.
But let me find it real
Did you use a
quick.
Pisces rising or a Cancer rising?
Yes, I used the Cancer rising, and then let me just find this, and then oh wait, you do this. Forgetting how to use Zoom.
I feel like every time.
Okay, here, can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah,
This is
so
August 11th.
August 11th, at 2:44 a.m.
Yeah. So this is like 3 hours after what I.
Oh,
Right.
Uh,
So we have the moon almost perfectly trining Jupiter,
sure.
and then
Yeah, and
Jupiter
enclosed by benefics.
right.
The moon's last aspect was a trine to Venus. Moon's next aspect is a trine to Jupiter. That's what I
So
mean by enclosed.
okay.
it's a beautiful moon with a really like perfect trine to Jupiter, and then this is during the Jupiter hour. I think that it ends around 250 or something like that. So it ends before Jupiter hits the ascendant.
Mm,
Uh, but
mm-hmm.
there's still a nice period in time here where Jupiter is close enough to the ascendant. It's Jupiter hour, and Moon is trining him almost perfectly. It's a really, I think it's a really sweet election. And then also
Mm-hmm.
in the Western, the Picatrix tradition, the Moon with the North Node is actually kind of a good thing. Um, in the Vedic tradition, it's not so
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
But even in the
Mm-hmm.
Vedic, I looked it up on my Vedic software, and it's just the moon with Rahu. There's no other malefics present, so that's all right. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
all right. Um, but if I'm looking at traditional Western astrology, like Picatrix, um, Moon with Rahu is fine, and then with those aspect from to Venus as the last aspect, and then the next aspect to Jupiter, it's beautiful. And then also, if you have benefics on an angle, it forgives other problems. So, and then I think
Mm,
also the moon is pretty fast here, and has a lot of light. So this is a pretty good election from my perspective. If you want
mhm,
to do a
mhm.
talisman, a talismanic election, this is a pretty good one.
And you live on the East Coast. That's going to matter in this election
Yeah.
because the moon is what, about 5 minutes away from making that partile trine to Jupiter, which means that in 7 minutes, then it's going to be separating. And so you would not want to make a talisman with the moon separating from Jupiter. You would
Oh,
prefer the applied aspect. And if you live west of this location, then this isn't going to happen until an hour later.
mm-hmm.
And so that the moon will have advanced a little further. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
So
like
yeah,
this is a great East Coast election.
Mm.
yeah. So you just want, with all these elections, you want to make sure that you have the, you've got Jupiter rising, you're in the Jupiter hour, the moon is still, because each location really depends. It
Hmm.
changes. So that's
Mm.
one of the beautiful things about astrology too. It's like it is very local. It's like universal and local
Yeah,
at the
that's
same
true.
time. You know.
Yeah, well, like I was being cheeky earlier about the whole like I'm at the center of the universe thing, but the whole that is the concept in
Yeah.
astrology is that like from where, and that's why I called the fundamentals course that I made on the fundamentals of astrology it's called Astrology from the Ground Up, and the idea is that your feet are planted in a particular location, and then you look up at the sky, and then that what's happening around you are at the center, and what's happening around you is the shape of the sky, and then that sort of determines the flow of whatever is begun in that moment. So if you were born in that moment, then whatever, then that's going to be the shape of your life, and or you create a talisman or a spagyric or whatever else in that moment, then it's going to sort of show the flow that comes out of that. But it is based on this idea that you are at the center of things, and so that how are you going to interact with that is like that's the whole craft of astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that visual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So those are the elections. Is there anything else we want to talk about Jupiter in Cancer before we get to like maybe the complications with like that Mars-Saturn opposition?
Yeah, well, I think that it's relevant to talk about the Mars-Saturn opposition because of Jupiter's position in Cancer, right?
Hmm.
So I mentioned before that Jupiter is in position to help, but Jupiter's going to have to do some helping here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like this looks like an uncomfortable situation. We've got Mars. So as soon as Mars moves into Libra, then and so today on the day of recording, Mars is in early Virgo, right? And so 6 weeks are going to pass, and then Mars is going to move into Libra, and immediately on entering Libra, Mars is going to oppose Saturn in Aries. And so an opposition by its nature is going to be conflict and tension. Think about two cars like running into one another, or
Mhm.
oppositions. They can also be headed in opposite direction, right? Like the way that I often think about oppositions is like you can't live with them, you can't live without them. Like there's a connection there. There's a strong connection, but like also can't stand this bullshit, like that kind of thing, right? And so both of the malefics, who are the gear grindy ones, they're the ones who cause trouble. I often think about Saturn and Mars as cops and robbers, right? Like they're both kind of up to no good, and they are enemies to each other, as well as nobody else likes them, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of vibe. And then those two are in opposition to each other, and both of them are uncomfortable to begin with because Mars is in Libra in detriment or exile, and Saturn is in Aries in fall. And so both of them are feeling pretty grumpy just by their nature. And then there's fighty energy that wants to take place under that as well. So it looks to me pretty inflammatory. It looks like the sort of situation where, okay, so Was it last time, 2 times ago? I was talking about Saturn and Aries as like the rules are not the rules, right? Like, so Saturn's job is to create rules and boundaries and stuff like that, has a difficult time doing that in Aries. And Saturn and Aries in that fallen position, one of the things that can happen with that is like overruling things, like becoming tyrannical in some kind of way, like too much rules, too much sort of like authoritative rule over everything. And then what happens in that environment is everyone pays lip service to the rules and then just kind of goes, okay, yeah, but like I'm actually going to live this other way, right? And so the rules are not the actual rules of engagement. There are real rules, but the stated rules are not the real rules, right? So that's how I'm thinking about Saturn and Aries, especially alongside Neptune. Neptune, whose job it is to dissolve boundaries. So Saturn's job is to create boundaries. Neptune's job is to dissolve them. Neptune's going to win this one. And so, so the rules are not the rules, and then that is in and so already, if we're thinking about, Aries has just been through a bunch of eclipses, and if we think about Aries as being like the emperor or the one who like wants to shape the world in its own image, then there's a lot of feelings around, like you can look geopolitically and notice that the ruler of the world, which has been the United States from, Bretton Woods, from World War II, whatever, is feeling threatened by the up and comer China, right? And so there's a sense of like, oh, I'm gonna have to like bring down the hammer and be like big on rules and like I'm the big one around here, right? And so there's a certain sense of threat there, right? And then we add to that Mars and Libra. So Mars's job is to be the warrior, to create conflict, to be aggressive, to move on things, right? Mars in Libra is I think about this as like the bull in the china shop, or the general at the cocktail party. Like, dude, why did you bring all these knives? Like, will you chill, please? Like, that's Mars in Libra, right? And so both of them are in this place of kind of insecurity, and they're beefing with each other.
Uh-huh.
And so it looks like a volatile moment where things are ready to pop off.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Isaac?
Mm.
Well, don't look good. Uh,
Dig it?
um, yeah. So in the tradition of Vedic astrology that I practice in, this particular combination, Mars and Saturn together, either in opposition if they're in the same sign, or if Mars is giving his fourth house aspect to Saturn, and Saturn is giving his 10th house aspect to Mars. So those three positions, those are called Yama yogas. There could also be if they're like in each other's sign, they're in like a mutual exchange. That could be a Yama yoga.
And Yama means
Yama
death,
Yama
right?
means death.
Yeah.
Yama is the lord of death. He's the Vedic god of death. So you know, on one level, that's all you need to know. But it's also force and power and like energy, like so like martial artists who have the ability to project chi.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they'll often have like that Yama yoga. I just did a research project on Tourette's syndrome, and I found a couple things. One of them was that 12 out of the 14 had an afflicted Venus, 10 out of the 14 had an afflicted Mercury, 12 out of the 14 had an afflicted ascendant. And then there was also this Bodhic situation with the second and third lord, which is beside the point. But they also 8 out of the 14 had a Yama yoga, and that is actually pretty significant considering how rare it is relatively. And I think I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not, the doctors don't even really know what causes Tourette's, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no cure for it. But I have some tics myself, and maybe not fully Tourette's, but I have some tics, and there's this premonitory urge. This is one of the things that they talk about with Tourette's. There's like energy coming through the body that you can sense a tic coming on, and from my experience with ticks, it feels like there's energy moving through the body, and a tick is a release of the tension.
Hmm.
So it's like that force, that power. But
Hmm.
that's science. I guess that's also kind of a tangent. We're talking about Yama Yoga in the sky right now. So there's like that force, there's some power going on that has the
Mm.
potential for death energy. This is a death energy, a very powerful energy happening in the sky all summer.
Hmm.
And there needs to be a release of tension for it as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
oftentimes that's war, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Now with Jupiter here, you know, in Cancer, perhaps that can be like a release valve or a controller, protector. Jupiter is the protector. I mean,
Hmm.
Mars is a kind of protector, but Jupiter is also a protector, and so perhaps that can help. But I do see, I mean, that does look like on a global perspective, a lot more of war, and death. So fun stuff. Fun
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, um, in on the micro scale, like on the scale of an individual's life,
Yeah.
this might be something to think with as far as that. I think the Tourette's and tic thing makes a lot of sense here. And so having something ready to go that is your release, that is like, and I would think that it wants to be kind of sudden, right? These are in cardinal signs. That's at the
Yeah.
very, what is this, the second degree of the cardinal signs, right? And so there's like, there's something here that wants to like make a quick move on something. And so it's probably a good idea to have something around that functions that way for you. Also, you might think about heat, and like I stay loving a sauna for Mars remediation. If you've got a bunch of Mars going on and all up in your piece, and you need to like sweating it out, is
Yeah.
probably a good way to deal with that. You know, there's an argument. I've heard people make the argument that this might not be so bad because these are in mutual reception. So if you assume that because Saturn is exalted in Libra, that we can call that a kind of rulership, and that Aries is ruled by Mars. And so each of these is in the other sign. And so a mutual reception is going to be, it's going to like improve whatever dynamic it is. So like if there's discomfort in the situation, then because they can see each other and they rule each other, then there's like they can work it out in some kind of way. Now, I am not sure that I'm sold on this, but because like Mars and Saturn beef so hard all the time anyway, and both of them are deeply uncomfortable in this moment. But, I wonder if there might be, in the first place, maybe a bit of ineptitude on both parts. Saturn's uncomfortable, Mars is uncomfortable. Neither of them is doing a good job doing their thing, right? So, if you're Marsing, if you're going to war about stuff, then
Yeah.
maybe your war is kind of ineffective, you know?
Yeah.
It might be a situation where, if Libra, that's the sign of the scales, where you can think about, exchange or merchandise or diplomacy or something like that. Like it might be a war of words or something like that. It might be a situation where, what's that word? Sanctions, economic sanctions might
Yeah.
show up in this kind of situation here. But then also, Saturn's job is to slow things down. And where Saturn and Neptune can agree is in slowness, right? Saturn and Neptune are closely conjunct here. They don't quite perfect that conjunction, but they get within a half a degree of each other. And so it's very relevant to talk about the two of them together. Saturn and Neptune disagree about most things, but they both like slowness. And so that it seems like even though there's this cardinal sign urge to move on things, then I wonder, especially if Mars is being is in the exaltation of Saturn as well. I wonder if there's a slowness that might give Jupiter in Cancer the opportunity to be like, hey, let's think about some perspective here. What's your ultimate goal? What's your uh, big view of everything? If we're looking at the whole forest here, if you pop off in this moment, does that serve your goal? Does that serve the thing that you are actually trying to cultivate in this moment? And so, even though it does look wildly uncomfortable, I don't know that this is the breaking point.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I don't think
Okay.
it's a breaking point either. I think it's a point of extreme tension.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
tension, and there will be some release too, but not again. Also, with everything else, I feel like the World War III is a little bit further ahead. but
Yeah.
but the other thing I'm thinking about here is like Mars and Saturn being extremes and opposites, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So traditionally, um, Mars is hot to like the fourth degree, hot and dry to the fourth degree. Saturn is cold and dry to the fourth degree. So they're as hot and as cold as you could be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Mars is also fast. He's not as fast as like Mercury, but Saturn is very slow. But
Mm-hmm.
that hot and that cold, to me, it reminds me of the myth of the Norse myths of creation, where you
Mm-hmm.
have the fire and the ice. They come together and then create the middle world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and that is to say like that whenever there's these extreme
Mm-hmm.
poles and there's tension, that has the possibility also for creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That tension can be released in something very destructive, but it can also
Mm-hmm.
be released in intentional creation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I see as like the out of Jupiter in Cancer there. Like if you're focusing on the creation of Jupiter in Cancer and
Mm-hmm.
creating the stuff with Jupiter in Cancer, you're giving a an outlet for that raw energy to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that idea. That you don't necessarily have to focus on the destructive force of the malefics, but rather if you can find a place to productively put your anger, frustration, and conflicted energy, then you actually have a strong opportunity to create something marvelous.
Yeah, and Cancer is the home. Cancer is the heart, like the emotional heart. Cancer is the mother. All of these things. And Jupiter is the planet of wisdom and of good luck and of higher teaching, higher knowledge, and expansion. So um, one thing I think would be good even just as a natural remedy is to focus on that, bringing those things into the home. Like maybe building a garden is a good thing, or like cleaning your house and bringing some using vastu or feng shui in your home, like
Mm,
reorganize your home. Like these are the kind of things I think could be helpful. So you're working on making your own home and your own life and your own heart more beneficial and more
mhm,
well organized, rather than focusing on the tension. It can go bad if because there's a lot of opportunities for that tension to blow up in negative ways. So by focusing on the home and like bring the wisdom into the home, that the
mm,
religious teachings into the home, into the heart, that's a good way to work with the Jupiter in Cancer if you're not going to make like a talisman or a spagyric or something like that, you know.
mhm, mhm. That's interesting. It's interesting to frame it this way. And it feels like a lot of what we're talking about is taking this difficulty and giving it a reframe, right? And so if we think about a reframe as like taking the same information and telling a different story about it, I
Mm.
think that it is likely to be the most powerful play possible, especially in the coming 7 years or so while Uranus is in Gemini,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, And that's a I guess that's the other thing we should really talk about is the Uranus and Gemini.
Yeah. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so if Gemini is, I think of Gemini as the storyteller, right? And one thing that, one of my go-to delineations for Gemini is never let the truth get in the way of a good story, right? Which I think is hilarious now, given that one of the large language models is called Gemini.
Ah.
And they famously hallucinate, but they're like they're feeding you a story. You know what I mean? It sounds good. It sounds so good. What if I just say it anyway? You know what I mean?
That's so true.
So
I love it.
right. So there's so with Uranus. So Uranus's job is to bring chaos, disorder, unexpected things, surprises, breakups, breakdowns, breakthroughs, break free. Liberation is very important to Uranus. And so bringing an innovative or inventive story to the situation is, if we're looking at the tension between Saturn and Mars, Uranus is already in Gemini at this point and is actually making a sextile and trine to those two while that's going on here. So I wonder if, I was talking about economic sanctions or something like that. I wonder if the play here might actually be misdirection, like trying to get the other guys to believe a story that's false so that they you're fainting, you're hoping that they'll go that way so you can catch them on the other side, I wonder if that might be the geopolitical play, which then might be co-opted for your individual life as well. So wherever you're in competition with someone else, there might be a play here where you can misdirect and see if you can create an opportunity for yourself on the other side of that. And then also, so Uranus and Gemini is an interesting situation. So Uranus is one of the outer planets. It takes a long time to do stuff. So Uranus moves through a sign in about 7 years or so. So that is to say that Uranus moved into Taurus, the sign before Gemini, in 2018. And it's now 2025, right? And so a lot of stuff has happened. People became Bitcoin millionaires in that time, and our relationship to food and resources have been wildly disrupted during that time. We can remember the supply chain disruptions that happened during COVID and all that, right? Like that sort of stuff is associated with Uranus and Taurus, right? And so Uranus moving into Gemini is a major historical thing. So we've got to contextualize this. And I feel like I say this every time I come on the show, but we're in a transitional moment at the historical level, right? And so I feel like I've been saying this and been saying this and been saying this, but that's because we're in between 200-year long periods, right? And so because those periods are so long, the transition between them feels long at our scale, right? And so really what we're looking at here is Pluto has moved into Aquarius, Neptune has moved into Aries, and Uranus at this point will have moved into Gemini. And so that's everybody changing signs, everybody in terms of outer planets changing, and outer planets, because they move so slowly, they sort of speak to the wider context of things, not necessarily pointed events, but rather the context in which things happen in the first place. The background influences. So all of those folks move into a new space and start doing new things basically all at the same time this year, 2025, right? Pluto's in Aquarius, Uranus is in Gemini, Neptune is in Aries. And actually, Uranus is not going to stick around in Aries forever, or in Gemini. Uranus is not going to stick around in Gemini. But rather is going to station retrograde and move back into Taurus, is going to make it as far back as 27 degrees of Taurus before moving forward again and then entering Gemini for keepsies in April of 2026. But this is, and so that's part of what I mean about this like long transitional period, right? But to see Uranus moving into Gemini is the forward facing, the new thing. And so if we think about Gemini as being associated with communications technology, right? The way that we spin stories, the way that we talk to each other, and this kind of thing. And then Uranus as being innovative in some kind of way. This looks like a new way to tell the story, an invention around how stories can be told. Now, this can be useful for us individuals, us not power players. I don't expect any presidents to listen to this show, but regular folks have the opportunity to reframe stories in ways that can be beneficial to us, right? The way that we consume and express information can change during this time. And even though that looks pretty dangerous, right? A lot of folks look at the future and they start getting Mennonite feelings about it. They're like, "Man, I don't know about this. I think backwards is the way to go," right?
Yeah.
But backwards isn't really an option.
Right.
We gotta look forward with it, right? And so invention, innovation, like being willing to disrupt things and then take advantage of the disruption that is taking place, ride that wave. That looks like Uranus and Gemini looks like a really good time for that. It looks like it wants to be really innovative as far as like communications technology is concerned, especially since it's making this trine a friendly and helpful aspect to Pluto in Aquarius, who I am explicitly associating with AI and future tech and deep fakes and all that sort of stuff, right? Like Pluto in Aquarius is very good for future technology in whatever kind of way it is. The last time we saw Pluto in Aquarius, it was Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. So that's future tech, right? For that era. Our future tech looks different than that, but is future tech to us. Even actually the craft of astrology is associated with Pluto and Aquarius. Nicepso and Petasiris, their text is said to have originated in a Pluto and Aquarius period. So this is so future tech and innovative communications, new ways to frame the information that you're getting. This is all very important here. Now, once Uranus makes this retrograde station, then that is going to be at 1 degree of Gemini, making a trine to Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. And both of those are making a sextile to Neptune at 1 degree of Aries. And so all of them are working in concert to create a new reality. You don't know what reality even am at this point, right? Because Saturn is conjunct Neptune. So Saturn's job is to create boundaries, create a kind of solidness about things, and then but can't do it because the just like borders and boundaries are just dissolving all over the place and just can't do it, right? So there's this real sense of like maybe anything is possible. Maybe anything is possible. Okay, so if anything is possible, then how can I frame things? How can I frame a story, a narrative, such that I can create something that is worth doing, worth living, a meaningful and fulfilling way of being?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's, yeah.
Heck yeah.
I mean, this really is like a important time, and yeah, we have been saying this whole time too. But it's important to like as you're talking about astrology being a future tech.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's on by studying astrology, we're seeing things on cycles that we're not used to, you know, as humans. We're thinking about days and weeks, maybe years, maybe decades. But these are cycles that are hundreds of years and thousands of years and yugas. Um, but I think that's a good way of looking at what we've got in store for us. So this Gemini, Uranus and Gemini, there's it's going to be dipping the toe into Gemini and then coming back out of Gemini, right?
Mm-hmm.
And coming back. When does it come back into Gemini for good?
April 2026.
April 2026.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be having kind of a brief glimpse, a foreshadowing of what that period will look like in the
Mm-hmm.
summer. Um, yeah.
I wonder how that the storytelling dynamics will change. I know it's like you can't predict what the future tech, innovative tech might be, but it's got my brain wondering.
Well, and also I wonder about with the so Pluto in Aquarius. We've got Pluto in Aquarius. We've got Neptune in Aries. We got Uranus in Gemini,
Mm-hmm.
and these are all very, yeah, very techy, technological signs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Aquarius is, I mean, like in the Vedic system, Aquarius is the the water storage, which is a human technology. Like it's the water storage
Mm-hmm.
outside of the city, um, and but it's also a very you know unconventional sign as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then Aries, I guess not as tech, but there's like it's getting things started. But I'm wondering where. Well, so the another way that I'm seeing this future is one of decline.
Sure. At least for
Where
the American Empire.
Yeah.
for the American Empire, definitely, and for industrial civilization, I think as well, because industrial civilization is dependent on fossil fuels, cheap fossil fuels, and this is something
Mm-hmm.
that's taking hundreds of it'll be 100 years before, but before there's like when people talk about peak oil, they're like it's just going to happen like right now all at once. There'll be this
Mm-hmm.
big collapse, but it's more it's this catabolic collapse. A long um
Mm-hmm.
a long
Decline.
decline, and there will be other empires that rise and fall in that time period as well. Like I'm sure China or India, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
part of the technology, the future technology, is how to use what resources we still have. Instead of like on the way up, the industrial civilization, the future tech is all about how do we like burn as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of, how do we create a flying car or something like that, or how do we go to the moon?
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily think that, like, I think that people might still try to go to Mars. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that fossil fuels, like, okay, so this is a good way to think about a reframe, right? So, like, if industrial civilization is dependent on fossil fuels, what if it were still industrial civilization but wasn't dependent on fossil fuels? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if we're going to innovate, then why wouldn't innovators be interested in energy production? Like, even your most drill baby drill politicians have to be aware that, or people who run Standard Oil or whatever, they're aware that you're going to run out of oil at some point, right? And so, and they're also aware that the sun shines more energy on the earth than we could possibly ever want, or like there are other ways to generate energy, right? And so if we have 7 years of Uranus in Gemini and also 20 years of Pluto in Aquarius looking at future tech, and the future tech. So one of the things that I think is really important to think with here is like, okay, so all these outer planets are working in concert, right? And so one of the things that's really important about Neptune in Aries is that Neptune in Aries cares very deeply about the war machine, right? So it's the dream, as I think the last time we talked, I talked about Neptune as the wellspring of dreams, right? The thing from which the thoughts become possible because of the dream that happened before them, right? And so Neptune creates the possibility of dreams in Aries, maybe dreams of war or, victory. Let's say like competitive advantage and stuff like this, right? And so there are whole countries competing for advantage, right?
Yeah.
And trying to find ways to do that. And AI is going to be super important to that, right? Like, take a look at Ukraine versus Russia, right? Russia was supposed to stomp Ukraine. It was supposed to be done in 2 months, and they're still fighting. And so why is that? Well, because AI drone warfare has changed the game. It's on the same level as gunpowder, which is another future technology associated with Pluto and Aquarius. So, so that first day that somebody fired a gun and hit a target, the game was changed,
Yep.
right? And so that first day that someone used a cloud of drones to attack a target and it was successful, then the whole game changed after that, right? And so the war machine is necessarily tied up in the future tech innovation, which has always been true. The tech innovation has always been associated with war and porn, also, for fun.
Yeah.
But
Mars and Venus.
yeah, we'll call it that. But
With Pluto.
because I'm sorry, say what?
Mars and Venus with Pluto. Something like that.
Yeah. There we go. There you go. Right, big Rahu energy there, right? But so with this like competition taking place here, then there's gonna be plenty of opportunities where the other side is still thinking in Earth empire terms, still thinking about fossil fuels and this kind of thing. Where innovation is possible, then there's an advantage possible. And so I don't necessarily think that industrial civilization has to collapse because fossil fuels aren't forever. Everyone is aware of this, even so-called climate deniers and this kind of thing. Like they've got to be aware that there's only so much shale in the ground. And so what are we going to do? And how are we going to beat the other guys with it, right? And so China has been working on nuclear energy and hydroelectric dams and this kind of thing, right? There are like different ways to push forward this idea of energy production. And they come with plenty of risks. And there's, I'm not trying to be all tech utopian about it, but I do think that especially if on the individual level, the move is the narrative reframe, then maybe it doesn't have to be this dystopian sink into destruction of everything, but rather maybe there are other plays, maybe there are other options, and there is advantage to be had by thinking outside the box.
Yeah, certainly. I do think that it's so there may be ways to get more energy, with various, all these alternative energies, but it's also like the fossil fuels is billions of years of concentrated calories that we've been burning up at a rate, and with AI it's even burning up. Like, how much energy does it take to
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, but the decline, I don't necessarily see as a negative thing. I mean, industrial civilization has been kind of a terrible thing for this planet and for humans in some
Sure.
ways. It's been wonderful in other ways. And the reframing, I think the narrative reframing is very important, but there's still like material conditions that a change in story won't change. That's the Saturn. That's the Saturn. Saturn's harsh realities.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see how
Saturn is also the frame.
Yeah.
Like the structure of things. So with Saturn in Saturn conjunct Neptune, then there is a certain sense of like, well, is anything possible? Could we really do anything? And then one of the things that we're going to see here as so Saturn is going to station retrograde pretty close to Neptune, and then is going to move back into Pisces on September 1st. And so then as Saturn is there in Pisces, then now Saturn is ruled by Jupiter. And actually, Jupiter is going to get pretty close to making a trine to that Saturn. And so this, it looks like a lot of the Saturn problems, at least during this time, are they benefit from Jupiter's exaltation. Like Saturn stuff, which in Pisces has been kind of nightmarish, with the North Node there and like polluting the oceans and whatever, you know what I mean? Like Saturn is bad and Pisces water, so bad water. Same sort of situation we did with the big water before, right?
Yeah.
But Jupiter now ruling that situation, making a trine, a friendly, helpful, benefic aspect to Saturn, looks like Jupiter is in position to help.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see some like legal things happening in terms of ocean pollution. Will that happen?
Like, oh, like, you mean like regulation?
Yeah, like regulation for ocean pollution.
Yeah, I wonder what, you know, like there is hope for the waterways while Jupiter is in Cancer, to be sure.
Yeah.
You know, that's 1 year, but we might be able to make it this year.
Yeah.
How did I become the cheerleader on this show? I feel like I usually come on here and like talk about all the things that are, you know, like that look so rough. But this time,
I'm not a pessimist. I'm just a realist. You know.
Ah, yes. We love a strong Saturn.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The other thing that is interesting too is that this Saturn Neptune conjunction, which doesn't perfect this year, but it's at 0 degrees Aries. And the other thing that about that 0 degrees Aries is like that's a very important point. You know? And with Uranian astrology, it's like that's a world point. Anything that happens on that degree, the first degree of Aries, is something that is important for the whole world. So this Saturn Neptune conjunction there is, and yeah, we'll talk about that later. But there's you know, we're just right in the middle of all this like era changing, like we're time, and so that's why it's like Jupiter in Cancer. It's like really kind of a short term thing. It's just this year.
It's true.
Gotta live it up.
Yeah.
But it's also it's the nice thing we've got. So
we're holding it close.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now's the time to like. If you're considering doing Jupiter magic, like now's the time to do it. Now is the time to do it, and it might help you through the next 7 years.
Sure. Yeah. You know, that's true. I definitely think it's a good idea to ride the Jupiter wave, right?
Yeah.
I really think that the narrative reframe is like the primary move. And I think I said it last time too, but when you're dealing in a situation where the rules are not the rules. Okay, so Saturn and Aries is the rules are not the rules, especially Saturn and Aries conjunct Neptune, right? Talked about that before. And then we put it on that 0 degree of Aries point, which is this world point, right? So the rules are not the rules for everyone. And we see the dissolution of boundaries for everyone. None of the rules-based anything is working the way that you thought it would, right? And so then there's a question about what the real rules are, right? And a lot of that can be written by you at your individual level. Now, you're not going to be able to change the laws of gravity or this kind of thing, but that's what I often think of, you know, like I've been really into Taoism recently and the idea of the way, right? Like the way that things go, and there's kind of only one way and everything just kind of fits that form, fits that flow. And so there's this one rule that is extremely well explained in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not expect that one, but okay, let's go. Let's hear it.
So there's, the idea of piracy is a really big, it's important, right? Because the rules, I don't care about the rules. I don't care about the laws. I'm out here on the high seas. Are they going to get me or are they not? You know what I mean? And so it's the question of, can you do the thing or can you not do the thing?
Okay.
That is the one rule. There's one rule, and it's can you do it or can you not do it? You know? And so if you can find a way to do the thing, then you can do it. And, you know, while we're in the wild west of future tech that hasn't been regulated properly and all that sort of stuff, you know, like what's going to happen is we're going to get into this future tech space, and then there's going to have to be a catastrophe or 7. And then after that, then there will be some regulation. But before that, then it's the wild west out here.
Sure.
And so while it's the wild west, then you can do whatever you want, and you can shape your own reality by shaping which pieces of information are the most important pieces of information. Like, what do you think is signal and what do you think is noise? Yeah. By taking that and framing it however fits well for you, such that you can do whatever it is that you're trying to do, then you can also go on to shape the world that exists for the next 200 years. We're in this transitional moment between historical moments. Like, you can make the next moment by following the real rule and not acknowledging the rules of the masters.
Yeah, and I guess that's also why the discernment is important, to know what the real rules are, because it is like, if you can do it, what can you do? But at the same time, in the age of piracy, a lot of those pirates ended up being hunted down by the English, the English Navy, and killed. After, you know, they got their money, and then there were repercussions as well. There, you know.
Sure. Well, no one looks back on the Wild West and was like, well, that was a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think the reframing is so important, and two is like there are a lot of ways to reframe this too. It's one thing, and two is like, what do you actually need, and what do I need? Like, you know, say that we are in an era of decline. It's like, do you really need to go on a vacation to Bali? You know, do you really need to get everything? You know, like you can reframe that as well. Like, what you actually need, what you want. Like, what do I really want? You know?
Sure. Yeah, I want to go to Bali. Do I really want to go to Bali, or do I want to feel better about where? Do I need a moment of repose? Do I need a moment to do something that isn't my 9 to 5 or something like that? Right? You can peel back layers. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. You know, do I really need 3 cars in order to feel safe? You know, can I just get by on one old car?
Sure.
Or something like that. Like, what? There's ways to reframe what you actually need, because a lot of times it's an idea of what. It's this idea, this fantasy, and it's not actually what you need. And sometimes you end up being you know, then it's just a memory that fades into oblivion. Anyway, sorry. I guess I am a little bit of a downer today, I guess.
What's going on?
You know,
Jupiter in Cancer.
be like that
Jupiter in
sometimes.
Cancer. We got it.
Yeah. You know, I do see all of the dangers that you're describing here, and I recognize them as dangers. And you know, we are definitely poised to notice some things that will likely at least feel like collapse in our immediate time frame. Right? Who knows how history is going to look back on this moment, but where we actually are sitting, it's going to likely feel like a certain amount of decline or collapse or other things like that, right?
Yeah, upheaval, change as well. Yeah.
Upheaval, yeah, that's a real good word for it. So, you know, and Uranus and Gemini, big on revolutions, at least in America. You know, like we had the Revolutionary War, we had the Civil War, we had World War II, the United States' entrance into World War II in Uranus and Gemini. So, we're poised for another one of these, and anyone can look at what's going on in geopolitics and a fucking military parade and all this that's been going on here, all this. So we can see that all this is happening here. And so I don't mean to downplay the danger of it,
Yeah.
but, there is, if things are so ossified that that there's no movement happening, then you're stuck in your station.
Yeah.
And I, at least, am an American, not about being stuck in my station. It's not, I'm way too uppity for that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if there's going to be a moment of disruption, then I have an opportunity to move up in a way that would not have been possible before.
Yep.
And it's really interesting because the last time I mentioned that I like said that explicitly, I think in a public space, was Jupiter in Capricorn, on the opposite side. Because Jupiter in Capricorn, that was 2020. That was when like the world was falling apart. And I was like, hold on a minute, hold on. What if we use this as an opportunity? I was talking about Jupiter in Capricorn as being like really resourceful, MacGyver, like take the shoelace and the floss and then make a ladder out of it, and you know what I mean? So that kind of thing, that's what I was saying at that time. And then now Jupiter is on the other side of things, looking great, looking like all things are possible with Jupiter, right? And so I don't know, like, what if we leaned into that for a year or two? Jupiter in Leo also looks pretty cute. So,
For sure. And I think that you're definitely right. It's that the periods in time where there's a lot of upheaval are the periods where anything can happen, and that includes going from nothing to everything. I mean, look at Napoleon, for instance.
Sure.
That kind of stuff is what happens. Yeah.
Totally. And I also am an American, so I'm kind of at the top of the heap. So I have a long way to fall also, right? So got to acknowledge that danger. But, if we can, if the wellspring of dreams brings a dream of technological victory and competitive advantage, then, like riding that and getting into the exhilaration of the fight might be part of the move here. You know what I mean? Like resisting the fight while Neptune is in Aries might not work very well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like trying to be grounded while Neptune is in Pisces. Like, good luck, my guy. But Neptune in Aries is gonna, so like Neptune, but while Neptune is in Pisces, if you get weird with it, then maybe you learn something new, right? Before Neptune was in Pisces, I thought astrology was trash. Then, while Neptune was in Pisces, I was like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe the world is made of things that I thought were fanciful before. What else? Like, oh, you can do magic too? What?
Right.
Are you serious?
Right. Yeah.
So I rode the wave and I became more powerful than I would have otherwise been.
Yeah.
And so Neptune in Aries similarly offers a paradigm shift that could offer you some power if you ride the wave to like competitive victory. You don't necessarily have to resist that, but rather get into it and be like, all right, we out here on the high seas. Somebody load them cannons up.
Let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready? You're ready.
Ready. Let's go to battle.
Aye, Captain.
Ooh. Yeah, I think that's good advice for this time. And it's like, we're still in the warm-up phases. So yeah, anything to close this forecast out on, or anything that we haven't talked about that we want to talk about before?
Did we talk about the Sun in Leo and
yeah.
King?
Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Good idea. Okay, so It's interesting to note that this year, um, the sun in Leo is opposite to Pluto in Aquarius. And this is going to be true about the sun in Leo for the next 20 years or something like this.
Mm.
So if we think about the sun as being the king, the sovereign, the one who really rules the roost around here, this is a perfect time to show the dog because
Yeah.
if we wonder who really rules the roost around here, then there's a strong argument to be had there. A man who needs attention. There he
There he
is.
is. There he is.
You know.
He needs your
So
attention.
um could I just have a little more? Would you look at me
Yeah.
again? Right? Like this big Sun and Leo energy there, right?
Mercy.
Needs to be seen.
Oh, oh, climbing towards you. Okay.
So um so the sun, the sovereign is opposite to Pluto in Aquarius, right? And so Sun Pluto is going to be kind of, the way that Pluto tends to magnify things, tends to like create a kind of gravity around it. Um, the Sun, in an opposition, in a hard aspect to Pluto, looks like it wants to be extremely solar, like very, very solar, but then also has trouble with that, you know? And so, in the same way that there's an insecurity that is associated with Saturn and Aries, opposite to Mars and Libra, I feel like, as the American empire starts to slip, then there's a kind of grasping for power that is likely to take place. And then while that's slipping, then others are also grasping for power. So that looks like it's really interesting, especially if we think about the attention economy and how that is like the most important. That, like somebody said that data was the new coal, but really it's like attention is the new coal,
Right.
right? Like where are your eyes focused? What kind of videos are you watching? What kind of things, media are you listening to? What kind of pundits do you believe? Which ones do you think are garbage? Like all of that sort of stuff looks like it wants to be the primary currency in this future tech moment. And so it just looks like a really, kings are not in the position that they wish they would be in this year. And I think throughout Leo season, we're going to really notice that. We've got a big Mercury retrograde in Leo this year as well. And that Mercury retrograde is actually going to station direct pretty well directly opposite to Pluto. So, to me, this feels like both intentional misdirection, like I said before, but also probably missing the mark sometimes. Just like not because it's, Pluto is often shrouded in shadow and darkness and this kind of thing. So like saying things and just like missing the mark, like a kind of let them eat cake kind of situation.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
like allegedly she didn't say it, but more importantly, the idea there is that she simply doesn't understand. She's like, what do you mean they don't have bread? Let them eat cake then. You know what I mean? She's like never experienced that kind of poverty before. And so she says a thing and then misses the mark about it. And then that leads to the guillotines. So I wonder if some kind of similar analog might be on the docket as far as that's concerned this year, especially during Leo season.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And then we're going to have 20 years of that too.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, at the same time that we're looking at the end of an understanding of what constitutes reality,
Yeah.
then we're also losing trust in the authorities, the leadership, And so this comes back to that one rule of like, where does the authority and leadership really come from?
Right. Yeah. So especially for the U.S., with Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini, it looks like we might have some sort of leadership change in the next
You think so?
Yeah. And we also are in a period of what they call elite replacement, which is not just like the actual CEO of the country or the ruler of the country, but like the ruling class of the country.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So everyone who went to Harvard and Yale and Princeton is in all those positions of power. Not everyone, but a lot like that class do seem to be complete in their own bubble, as it were. You know,
Mm-hmm.
their Marie Antoinette bubble. Um, and we were already seeing that too with like the a lot of the managerial jobs are being liquidated, right,
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
AI.
Right.
So that I see as part of that too. It's not just the actual king, but like the ruling class is having a
Mm-hmm.
replacement period. So probably by the time that Pluto is out of Aquarius, you know, we'll have an entirely new class of elites in the U.S. at least, probably
Mm-hmm.
in many other places. So that's kind of what I see with that.
Yeah, it's you know, what a time to be alive.
Yeah,
We
Yeah,
true.
we're gonna witness something wild, and I think the move is to be wild with it.
yeah, yeah. Be wild with it,
Yeah.
with it.
Roll with the punches.
Wild Wild West.
A wicked wild, wicked wild, 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 wicked wild.
Hey, I'm
Speaking
thinking
of fallen kings,
Tupac
Yeah.
and
Right.
Dr. Dre, California. No,
oh sure, I was making a Will Smith reference, but I'm with that.
different Wild West, the same time period.
Yeah.
Uh, Tupac is a fallen king, yeah, as well. Would you say Will Smith is a fallen king?
Absolutely,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Will Smith is the first hip hop artist to ever win a Grammy. He is,
Oh, really? Really? Wow.
yeah, he's like the winningest actor who ever lived.
Yeah.
Maybe Tom Cruise beats him. Maybe it's a race. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then he like runs into this and he like smacks a jester, and then it's all that. When was the last time you heard from Will Smith?
Oh, only pathetic things. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So yeah. And I think even did he win the Oscar that night for a king role?
Oh.
Like he was Serena Williams' dad
Uh-huh. Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
the biopic or something. I didn't see the film, but I think it's called. I think King or Royalty is even in the name.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, so to brief overview, you know, we've got Jupiter in Cancer for this
King
summer.
Richard
King
is the
Richard.
name of
And
that
he
film.
was the Prince of Bel Air. Yeah, he said the prince became a king, and yeah.
Yeah.
He is still much wealthier than any of us probably will ever be. So I don't know how far he's fallen, but he has fallen in terms of public approval
Yeah.
or
Yeah, and I wonder how he feels about himself when he's by himself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
I
how
don't
it
know.
feels, but like to go from being the king to not being the king anymore probably sucks.
Sad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole problem with being the king
Mm-hmm.
is that then you have to not be the king at some point.
Word.
We just watched this
What if we had no kings?
we just watched this Ren Fair documentary on a king of the
Oh
Texas
my
Ren.
gosh, it was like kind of like Tiger King vibe, you know?
Mm.
I don't know if you ever saw that show, but it was like the Ren Fair King. He was literally King George.
Yeah,
It was very
it
interesting.
was like in his 80s, mid late 80s,
Yeah.
and just
He's the king of the
addicted to
Texas Ren
power.
Fair. Yeah,
addicted to power.
it was interesting.
That's another that like. Anyway, I think we're getting a little too far off, but yeah. So we've got the Jupiter in Cancer. We've got the Uranus in Gemini.
Yeah.
Got the
Mm-hmm.
Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius, and those are sort of like the big things happening. And I suggest, get that Jupiter blessings, those Jupiter blessings while you can.
Yep.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. So anything else we want to talk about before we wrap up?
Nah,
Cool.
let's
I
leave it
think we
there.
covered the list. Yeah.
Cover the
Yeah,
list.
we've come a long way.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one will be the fall. Oh my God, they say midsummer, right? This is like midsummer is the solstice, Midsummer Night's Dream, and so on. But we haven't even gotten early summer yet, so
Sure. Yeah.
it's like when summer is this?
I'm in a shawl right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Long sleeves.
long sleeves. Anyway, it's always lovely. Thank you, Zamboni, for being on the show, and I think we got it.
Indeed.
This was a great episode. So
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me another time. I always appreciate being here.
And definitely go to ZamboniFunk.com and Instagram, YouTube, all of the places, ZamboniFunk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Look forward to
cheers.
seeing y'all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peace and blessings, fam.